Happy April! Yay, it's April 1st, finally. I always like the beginning of April because I feel like it's the rebirth, like of the earth. Like the weather will start getting warmer. We're gonna see some leaves on the trees again, some flowers sprouting. So it's always symbolizes hope and just an exciting time. All right, so we are going to move on to chapter 3 in the book Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson Haddix. All right, chapter 3. Luke lay on his stomach on the floor and idly ran the toy train back and forth on the track. The train had belonged to Dad when he was a little boy, and his father before him. Luke could remember a time when his greatest longing had been for Mark to outgrow the train, so Luke could have it all to himself. But it wasn't what he wanted to play with today. It was a beautiful day unfolding outside, with fleecy clouds and a blue sky, and a mild breeze rustling the grass in the backyard. He hadn't left the house in a week now, and he could almost hear the outdoors calling to him. But now he wasn't even allowed in the same room as an uncovered window. "Are you trying to be discovered?" Dad had bellowed at Luke just that morning, when he'd held the shade a few inches back from the kitchen window and peeked out longingly. Luke jumped. He'd been so busy thinking about running barefoot through the grass that he had half forgotten there was anyone or anything behind him in the house. "No one's out there," he said, glancing again to be sure. He'd been trying to not look beyond the the ragged edge of the backyard to the bulldozed mess of branches, trunks, and leaves, and the mud that once had been his beloved woods. "Yeah," Dad said. "Did it ever occur to you that Did it ever occur to you that if there is, they might see you before you see them?" He grabbed Luke by the arm and jerked him back a good 3 feet. Freed from Luke's grasp, the bottom of the shade banged against the windowsill. "You can't look out at all," Dad said. "I mean it. From now on, just stay away from the window. And don't go into the room unless we've gotten shades or the curtains pulled." "But then I can't see anything," Luke protested. Better that than to get turned in," Dad said. Dad sounded like he might feel sorry for Luke. But that only made things worse. Luke turned around and left, scared he might cry in front of Dad. Now he gave the toy train a shove. It careened off the track and landed upside down, wheels spinning. "Who cares?" Luke muttered. Then there was a harsh knock at his door. "Population police, open up!" Luke didn't move. "That's not funny, Mark," he shouted. Mark opened the door and bounded up the stairs that led to Luke's room. Luke's room was also the attic, a fact that he had never minded. Mother, long ago, had shoved all the trunks and boxes as far as they could go under the eaves, leaving prime space for Luke's brass bed and circular rag rug and books and toys. Luke had never even heard Matthew and Mark grumble about Luke having the biggest room, but they had windows. "Scared you this time, didn't I?" Mark asked. "No," Luke said. Nothing would force him to admit that his heart had jumped. Mark had been playing the population police joke for years, always out of their parents' earshot. Usually Luke just ignored Mark, but now with Dad acting so skittish, what would Luke have done if it really had been the population police? What would they do to him? "Mark and me never..." Sorry, that's Zazu barking. "We've never told anyone about you," Mark said, suddenly serious, which was strange for him. "And you know your mother and Dad don't say anything. You're good at hiding. So you're safe, you know?" "I know," Luke muttered. Mark kicked the toy train Luke had crashed. "Still playing with baby toys?" he asked, as if to make up for slipping up and being nice. Luke shrugged. Normally he would have wanted Mark to know he played with trains anymore, but today everything else was so bad that it didn't even matter. "Did you come up here just to bug me?" Luke asked. Mark put on an offended look. "Though you might want to play checkers," he said. Luke squinted. "Mother told you, right?" he asked. "No, you're lying," Luke said, not caring how nasty he sounded. "Well, if you're going to be that way, just leave me alone, okay?" Okay, Mark backed down the stairs. "Jeez." Alone again, Luke felt a little sorry that he had been so mean. Maybe Mark had told the truth. Luke should apologize, but he really didn't feel like it. Luke got up and started pacing his room. The squeak of the third board in from the stairs annoyed him. He hated having to duck under the rafters on the far side of his bed. Even his favorite model cars lined up on the shelves in the corner bothered him today. Why should he have model cars? He'd never even sat in a real one. He never would. He'd never get to do anything or go anywhere. He might as well just rot up here in the attic. He thought about that before, on the rare occasion when Mother, Dad, Mark, and Matthew all went somewhere and left him behind. What if something happened to him and they never came back? Would someone find him from now? Abandoned and dead? He'd read the story in one of these old books in the attic about a bunch of kids finding a deserted pirate ship, and then the skeleton in the front of the rooms. He'd be like that skeleton, and now that he wasn't allowed in the rooms with uncovered windows, he'd be a skeleton in the dark. Luke looked up automatically as if to remind himself that nothing lit the rafters but the single bulb over his head, except there was a light at either end of the ceiling, leaking in under the peak of the roof. Luke stood up and went to investigate. Of course, he should have remembered. There were vents at each end of the roof. Dad grumbled occasionally about the attic for Luke. It's just like throwing money out the vents. But Mother always fixed him with one of her stairs, and nothing changed. Now Luke climbed on top of one of the largest trunks and looked down the vent. He could see out. He could see the strip of the road and the cornfield beyond, its leaves waving in the breeze. The vent slanted down and limited his view, but at least he was sure nobody would ever be able to see him. For a moment, Luke was excited, but that quickly faded. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life watching the corn grow. Without much hope, he stepped down from the trunk and went to the other end of the attic, the portion that faced the backyard. He had to slide boxes around and drag an old step stool out from the opposite end of the attic, but finally his eyes were level with the back vent. The view was not of the backyard. It was too close, but of the former woods. He'd never realized before, but the land where it sloped away from his family's house, so he had to clear the acres and acres that once had been covered with trees. The land was abuzz with activity now. Huge yellow bulldozers shoved back from a rough road that had been traced out with gravel. Other vehicles Luke couldn't identify were digging holes for huge concrete pipes. Luke watched in fascination. He knew tractors and combines, of course, and he had seen his dad's bush hog and manure spreader and gravity wagons up close in the barn. But these machines were different, designed for different jobs, and they were all operated by different people. Once when Luke was younger, a tramp had walked up to the house, and Luke had only had time to hide under the sink in the mudroom before the man was in the house begging for food. The door of the cabinet was cracked, so Luke had been able to peek out and see the man's patched trousers and holey shoes. He heard his whiny voice. "I ain't got no job, and I ain't ate in 3 days. No, I can't do farm work for my food. What do you think I am? I'm sick. I'm starving." Other than that tramp and pictures and books, Luke had never seen another human being besides his parents, Matthew and Mark. He never dreamed there was such a variety. Many of the people running the bulldozers and shovel contraptions were stripped of their shirts, while others standing nearby even wore ties and coats. Some were fat and some were thin. Some were browned by the sun. Some were paler than Luke himself, who would never be tan again. They were all moving, shifting gears and lowering pipes, waving others into positions. At the very least, they were talking at full speed. All that activity made Luke dizzy. The pictures in the book always showed people still. Overwhelmed, Luke closed his eyes and then opened them again for fear of missing something. "Luke!" Reluctantly, Luke slid down from his step stool perch and scrambled over to recline innocently on his bed. "Come in," he called to his mother. She quickly climbed the stairs heavily. "You okay?" Luke dangled his feet over the side of the bed. "Sure, I'm fine." Mother sat on the bed beside him and patted his leg. She swallowed hard. "It's not easy, the life you've got to live. I know you'd like to look outside. I know you'd like to go outside." "That's okay, Mother," Luke said. He could have told her then about the vents. He didn't want to see how anyone could object to him looking out there. But something stopped him. What if they took that away from him, too? What if Mother told Dad and Dad said, No, that's too much of a risk. I forbid it." Luke wouldn't be able to stand it. He kept silent. Mother ruffled his hair. "You're a trooper," she said. "I knew you'd hold up all right." Luke leaned against his mother's arm. She moved her arm around his shoulder and hugged him tight to her side. He felt a little guilty for keeping a secret, but mostly reassured, loved and reassured. Then, more to herself than to him, Mother added, and things could be worse. Somehow that wasn't comforting. Luke didn't know why, but he had a feeling that what she really meant was things were going to get worse. He snuggled tighter against his mother, hoping he was wrong. And that is the end of chapter 3. So, my question for you today is, at the end of this chapter, Luke's mom, Mrs. Garner, she tries to comfort him. She tells him things could get worse. What do you think she means by that? How could anything get worse? So I want you to write in the comments, what do you think could get worse? How do you think things could get worse for this family, for Luke? What do you think Mom's referring to? All right, tell me why you think that, and I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you enjoy the first day of April. I will see you tomorrow when we go to chapter 4.